In this video, we're looking at UFC 292. We're going to break down the entire card from top down, talk about some of the best bets of the week. We're going to do it for every fight, so make sure you watch until the end. As always, you can call me Kunith. Let's make some money this week. For UFC 291, we were perfect. We called the entire card. You don't believe it, go check the tape. For UFC Nashville, if I had to give myself a grade, it would be an F-, +-. It was bad. But last week, we struggled once again, going 12 for 13. Mike Breeden was the PRP pick. It didn't matter because the 2, the 4, the 6, the 8, the 10, and the 12-leg parlay hit on the website. Come on! Using the same things that I put on KunithMMA.com, not only was I able to take down my DraftKings contest for $7,500 of winnings, but we hit a 12-leg parlay, and I'll just show you what the official betting guide looked like last week. Here is what you would have seen on the website had you had a membership from KunithMMA.com. You have 2-leg parlay, Damon Blackshear, Josh Fremd, 5 units, bang. Luana Santos, moneyline, bang. We missed on Josh Parisian, Martin Budai to go the distance. But that's okay because AJ Dobson at plus money, bang. Cub Swanson plus 350 to win by decision. Grah. 2 units on Vicente Luque. Look around. Using these same things that I put on the website, betting likely what is the same amount of money that most of you guys are betting, your boy walked away with over $23,000 in winnings. Nobody's doing it. What we've built here on the channel, in the community, on KunithMMA.com, it is an absolute one of one in the space. And if you're new here and you're like, what is this guy talking about? Go check the community tab on YouTube. This pudding tastes like the proof. One of one. I'm not going to waste any more time, but I'm not going to be humble about it. And I'm partially joking. In all seriousness, it was very humbling to win that much money at once, and I appreciate all of the support that you guys show the channel, show the website, when you guys are cool with me missing a couple of weeks because I get busy or I get lazy. So shout out to you guys, shout out to all the champions on the site. Very happy with the way that things have been going over the last couple of weeks. It's storybook. I can't believe it. And with that, we can get into the breakdown, top down as always, starting with the main event, arguably the most difficult title in all of MMA right now to capture. We got the bantamweight gold on the line. Aljamain Sterling is looking to defend his title yet again against Sugar Sean O'Malley, who is 8-1 in the UFC, and his success is coming from a couple of things. For bantamweight, his combination of size, speed, unusual power is something that sets him apart from almost anybody else in the division. He's as slick a striker that you'll find in the UFC and a true knockout artist. He's coming off a win over Petr Yan in a fight where most people thought he lost, and it was a bad decision. He was out grappled, he got caught by big shots during the striking exchanges, and he had his best round in the third round, but throughout that fight he was losing a majority of the minutes, which makes it tough because Sean O'Malley at plus money looks finger licking good, but Aljamain Sterling is a world-class minute winner. He's chopping guys down with hard kicks at range, and he's a dog on a bone when he's able to get his wrestling going. He took down Henry Cejudo 4 times in his last fight, TJ Dillashaw twice inside of 2 rounds, and he came up empty on a ton of takedown attempts against Petr Yan, but when he was able to get him down, he controlled him for nearly 10 minutes of that fight. If he can get this fight to the ground in his world, his control on top is absurd. He's going to be way stronger than O'Malley when they hit the clinch, and he's going to win every round that he gets a takedown in, I'm sure of it. And from a betting perspective, you love when guys bring that skill set. My issues with the champ, however, for as good as a grappler as he is, for how much we talk about his Brazilian jiu-jitsu, for how much time he spends on guys' backs, where are the submissions? Yes, he choked out Corey Sandhagen, made it look easy in the opening round. Yes, he scored that crazy submission over Cody Stamann a few years back, but outside of that, he hasn't secured a submission win since 2015. On top of that, his run as champion has been suspect. He wins by disqualification over Petr Yan to get the belt in the first place, in a fight that he was losing nearly every minute of. Then he wins a split decision against Petr Yan in a rematch where most fans thought that he lost. He beats TJ Dillashaw, who came in with an arm injury so bad it turned him into a one-armed fighter. So he beats one-armed TJ Dillashaw. Then he wins a split decision yet again over Henry Cejudo, who was out of action for 3 years. And I don't mean any disrespect to Aljamain, but he's had the least dominant run as a champion we've ever seen from a fighter with multiple title defenses. The question this fight poses is, what does Sean O'Malley bring to the table that the recent contenders have not? Well, first is the length and the size. Aljamain Sterling is almost always the bigger man in there. That won't be the case this week. Second is the power. Outside of Marlon Moraes, O'Malley is easily the biggest puncher Aljamain Sterling will fight. Lastly is momentum. Petr Yan is 1-4 in his last 5. TJ Dillashaw 1-2 in his last 3 and retired. Triple C, for as good as he is, coming off of a 3-year layoff and not looking as sharp as he did when he left. left. So give me the youth, give me the star power, give me the size, give me the worst haircut. I like Sean O'Malley to catch Aljamain Sterling here, finish him late in this fight, maybe the third, maybe the fourth round. Give me the Sugar Show to win this fight by knockout and new. Now in the co-main event spot, we have a fight between Zhang Weili and Amanda Lemos. This fight is smoke, absolute smoke. This is big smoke, pop smoke, train smoke, liquid smoke. Zhang Weili is going to be puffing on that Lemos pack because she's going to be better than her everywhere. She's going to beat her everywhere, and she probably finishes her in the first, maybe the second round. Amanda Lemos has big power, does a good job of throwing straight punches down the middle, but Zhang Weili is on another level. At this point, her movement, her power, her strength in the clinch, her wrestling is going to be way too much for the 36-year-old Amanda Lemos. And she's 3-1 in her last 4 fights. You can argue that she should be 2-2 because Angela Hill beat her. Everybody watching knows that Angela Hill won that fight. She follows that up with getting arm triangled by Jessica Andrade, which is just low fight IQ stuff. Now she's coming off of back-to-back wins over Michelle Waterson and Maryna Rodrigues. Michelle Waterson at this point hasn't put too many wins together in a very long time. And Maryna Rodrigues, for as good of a striker as she is, we know that she has some holes in her game. And while Amanda Lemos is fighting Montserrat Ruiz, you have Zhang Weili who's fighting Jessica Andrade, Joanna Jędrzejczyk twice, you got Carla Esparza, Rose Namajunas twice. I see Weili closing distance quickly, getting Amanda Lemos up against the fence, taking her down, landing big shots, and I think that Amanda Lemos is going to give up her back right away. Very confident that Weili Zhang wins this fight. She wins inside the distance. And consider this, at the time of recording this, Weili is somewhere between -300 and -400 on the money line. But if you take Weili Zhang inside the distance, it's -120.
It's free real estate.
Real quick, before we talk about the next thing, if you don't mind, like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment something for the algorithm. You all do such a great job with the likes, comments, subscriptions. I really do appreciate it. And share this with somebody you know is going to be watching the fights this week. All free ways to support the channel. Much appreciated. Next, we have a fight between Neil Magny and Ian Machado Garry. Neil Magny steps in on short notice to keep Ian Garry on the card. He saves the day. Thank you, Neil. Neil Magny is not an easy fight for anybody because he's a true veteran. He knows how to compete at a high level, and I believe that he's a smarter fighter more than he's physically talented. Against the cage, Neil Magny is one of the best in the business. He knows how to land shots in tight, he grinds on guys, he puts a pace on them, he takes guys down, and he knows how to win minutes with that control. But unfortunately, Angela Hill is going to get cooked this week because Ian Garry probably knocks him out. Garry is undefeated, nearly 10 years younger, and he's landing nearly twice the amount of strikes per minute as Neil Magny is, and he's coming into this fight on a full training camp as opposed to Magny, who's stepping in on short notice. Now, if you've watched this channel for a while, you know that I have not always been super sold on Ian Garry. I talked about the Ian Garry fade spot for a long time like a damn Momo. But I will say that I've not only been proven wrong, but I will admit that Ian Garry is the truth. He's improving so much fight to fight, and even when he's struggling, even when there's some adversity, he's finding ways to win. You take a look at his UFC debut against Jordan Williams. Jordan Williams was touching him up. He was piecing him up. He had his nose bloodied, and then he knocks Jordan Williams out with the last strike of the round. He wins a decision over Darian Weeks, where he just looked like he was in control of the fight the entire time. Follows that up with beating the piss out of Gabe Green, who's a tough guy to beat. After that, he's fighting Song Kanan, who is known for his power. He drops Ian Garry, and Ian Garry is able to fight his way back into it and not only win that fight, but finish that fight. He follows that up with a perfect head kick and finish over Daniel Rodrigues, who has that dog in him. That blew me away. He can do it all. He's got that young guy athleticism and toughness, but with a veteran's mind, so he's very dangerous. I think he smashes Neil Magny this week. He wins by knockout. It likely comes in the first round. Give me the future. Give me Ian Garry to win by knockout. Next, we have a fight with Marlon Vera. Marlon, are you there? Marlon, we power through. Interesting fight between two bantamweight bangers. Marlon Vera, 82% finish rate in his career, and it's obvious as to why. Sometimes he doesn't let his hands go, but when he's warmed up and he's throwing bombs aplenty, sharp, low, and high kicks, plus his hands are heavy, vomit on his sweater already. Mom spaghetti. Oscar, have you been listening to Slim Shady again? What are you writing here? Vera's coming off a loss to Corey Sandhagen where he just couldn't get out of first gear, and that's concerning moving forward because for somebody who's already a slow starter, if he puts out effort like that, fight in, fight out, he's going to find himself losing decisions. On the other side, Pedro Munhoz cashed as a nice underdog for us last time out against Chris Gutierrez, and while he's 37 years old, he hasn't lost a step. Munhoz is always going to give you pace, pressure, solid chin, hard chopping low kicks, big hooks. He's never been finished in his career. His jiu-jitsu is solid. Overall, there is a lot to like about Pedro Munhoz literally every time he steps out there. But my issue with Pedro Munhoz is that his durability is too good. His chin is so great that it makes his defense terrible because he doesn't mind getting hit. He might feel fine in there, but from a judging perspective, he's catching hands and feet left and right, and these are scoring shots, and that's why he keeps coming out on the wrong side of decisions more often than not lately. Now, Marlon Vera is someone who can find himself being outlanded 2-1 and still win rounds because of having big moments and landing huge shots. Earlier, we talked about him having a stinker against Corey Sandhagen, but Sandhagen's footwork froze Chito in that fight. Sandhagen was never on the center line, never in one spot for too long, consistently switching stances. Pedro Munhoz moves in one direction. It's forward and right at you. He's got a giant head that does not move very much, nor does he care to move it all that much because he has one of the best chins we've ever seen. When we talk about best chins ever, there's a lot of Max Holloway talk, a lot of Drew Dober talk. Pedro Munhoz never even been dropped, but because of that, he is going to give Marlon Vera a ton of opportunities to land these big shots, these big elbows, these big punches that he's known for, and I think we see vintage Chito here. I think he gets back to his winning ways. I think he busts up Pedro Munhoz, getting big reactions from the crowd and winning rounds based on these moments. I like the over in this fight because neither man's been finished. I think this fight going the distance is probably the best bet here, but the pick for me is Marlon Chito Vera by decision. Next, we have a fight between Chris Weidman and Brad Tavares. The return of Chris Weidman is upon us. Aren't you excited? No, not that much? Okay, I understand. Weidman is coming back to the UFC after suffering that nasty leg break against Uriah Hall just over 2 years ago. He's 39 years old at this point, but he's looking to make a run for the title. Yeah, okay. You know what's crazy about this? He's 39 years old, Brad Tavares is 35, and Chris Weidman at one point was an undefeated, reigning, defending UFC champion. But despite being older, having that championship run, he still has fewer professional fights than Brad Tavares, fewer UFC fights than Brad Tavares, and Brad Tavares has been in the UFC for longer than Chris Weidman. That's crazy stuff. And Brad Tavares is a veteran. He's tough. He can go a hard 3 rounds. Hell, he went the distance with Dricus du Plessis just last year and won the first round of that fight. I've heard people making a lot of his chin because he got knocked out by Bruno Silva, even though that was a bit of an early stoppage. Bruno Silva is one of the hardest pound-for-pound punchers in the entire sport, and he also went the distance with Dricus du Plessis. Dricus du Plessis just ran through Robert Whittaker. What are we talking about? And there's still a lot of fight left in Brad Tavares, while for Chris Weidman, he looks like he was done just a few years ago. Again, once upon a time, he was an undefeated champion, but he fought Luke Rockhold on the same card that Conor McGregor knocked out Jose Aldo on, which feels like a lifetime ago. That beating from Rockhold changed him forever. He went on to lose multiple times, getting finished over and over again. He's 2-6 in his last 8. He's been finished in all of those losses. He hasn't recorded a knockdown in nearly 10 years, and he's been out of action for over 2 years. I see Brad Tavares just being the better striker, stuffing the takedowns, winning rounds cleanly. He isn't rocking guys with power shots often, and I don't see him knocking out Chris Weidman here, but I do see him winning more minutes and being just a step ahead here. Do I love seeing minus 250 next to Brad Tavares' name? No, but it's justified. I see him winning, looking good this week. Give me Brad Tavares to win this fight by decision. Now for this next fight, there is a 0% chance that we see this go the distance. Denis Tiuliulin versus Gregory Rodrigues. Tiuliulin is yet to see the scorecards in the UFC, and RoboCop's fights are ending inside the distance 14 out of 18 times. Denis Tiuliulin is a striker, an extremely one-dimensional striker at that, and on the feet, he can knock out anybody at middleweight. Not only does the man have serious power, but he's very aggressive, and he's not afraid to let his hands go. Now on the other side, Gregory Rodrigues is well-rounded, a phenomenal grappler, but he's fallen in love with the power in his hands, and he's willing to slug it out. He had a few close calls against Chidi Njokuani. He was most recently knocked out cold by Bruno Ferreira, who was not very good. He got lit up on the feet by Armen Petrosian in a fight that was competitive, but Armen Petrosian can't wrestle a lick. He was knocked out cold by Jordan Williams on the Contender Series. Jordan Williams went 1-2 on the Contender Series and 0-2 in the UFC. Now Denis Tiuliulin can't grapple, and it's not just that he's a bad grappler. I don't think that he physically can grapple. Most of his losses are by submission. Last time out against Jung Young Park, he looked like a guy who had never grappled a day in his life. If the fight hits the mat at any point, he is absolutely cooked. But MMA is a volatile game, and you have to match the chaos when you're betting on the sport. RoboCop may close at a minus 400 favorite. He has the skills of someone who should be those odds. And I love me some RoboCop. I have since the beginning. If you've been watching the channel, you know that. However, at this point, he's made it very, very clear that he will fight to the level of his competition more often than not. He makes too many mistakes defensively. His head is straight up. He's very easy to hit. Sometimes when he gets hit, he freezes up. His arms go straight out in front of him. And mentally, he's so tough. He's got so much dog in him, but his chin is not as tough as his will to win. I see him spending more time on the feet than he needs to in this fight. I see Denis Tiuliulin landing heavy. RoboCop needs this fight on the mat ASAP, and if he doesn't get it there, he is absolutely in trouble. I'm banking on the idea of him coming in with a bad game plan. I think Gregory Rodrigues comes out here and tries to stand and bang for a wee bit too long, and I'm smelling an upset brewing. Give me Denis Tiuliulin, the 11-7 wonder, to win this fight this week by knockout. The amount of mismatches that are on this card is staggering. You have Austin Thud Hubbard, one of the best nicknames ever. Kurt Holloway put on one of the best performances on this season of The Ultimate Fighter that we saw throughout the entirety of the show with his win over Jason Knight. Impressive stuff. But Ultimate Fighter aside, Holobaugh has been 0-4 in the UFC, lost on the Contender Series. He's 35 years old and he's a dangerous fighter, but Austin Hubbard is tougher than a $2 steak, and Kurt Holobaugh doesn't win decisions. Austin Hubbard has a fantastic chin. He's very steady. He's going to be the fresher man in the later stages of this fight. He's younger. He's actually had success in the UFC, and he's coming out of a great camp. Justin Gaethje, Kamaru Usman, Rose Namajunas. This season of The Ultimate Fighter was his to lose from the jump, and it's nice to see a hard-working young man get back to where he belongs because he was competitive in the UFC. I see him going out there and just out-hustling Kurt Holobaugh, especially in the second and third round. He probably loses early. This is probably a good live betting opportunity spot for you to get him after the first round. But I assure you, he's going to be coming on strong in the second and third rounds. Expect a workman-like performance from Thud this week. Give me Austin Hubbard to win this fight by decision. Next, we have another tremendously juiced favorite in Andrea Petroski, sitting at nearly -300 odds. He is fighting Gerald Meerschaert this week in a grappler's delight. We have picked Andrea Petroski every time he's fought in the UFC, every time on this channel, and it's paid off. He's undefeated in the UFC. He's winning in dominant fashion, and we've seen him out-grapple everybody that they've put in front of him. He offers a lot from a betting perspective. He throws bombs on the feet, almost exclusively bombs. One of these days, he's going to sleep somebody with a big hook. He's an absolute monster on the mat, very strong, and he's always looking to find ways to end the fight. He loves the top control. He works well from a dominant position, and he's shown us that he can fight 15 minutes when he needs to. We saw that last time out in that dominant win over Wellington Turman, took him down every round, beat the piss out of him. And on the other side, you have this son of a biscuit-eating bulldog in Gerald Meerschaert, who's still doing it. You cannot give the man an inch on the mat because he's going to wrap up your neck and he's going to choke you, and you're going to be very upset about it. Very Paul Craig-esque is Gerald Meerschaert. He has a way of hanging around in these fights, even if he's taking punishment, even if he's accepting bottom position. He's just remaining calm, remaining dangerous, remaining crafty. He's got one of the best guillotines and frontal choke packages in the business, and if Petroski leaves his neck in harm's way for too long, it's getting snatched up. But Petroski is smart, and he knows that he doesn't really have much to worry about on the feet. He may elect to strike even more in this fight than we've seen him do in the past. On top of that, if he's getting takedowns, he's probably going to look for trip takedowns, body lock takedowns, stuff that will have him land in half guard and side control, maybe even full mount. He does not want to land in guard. He does not want to go for single legs or double legs where his neck is off to one side. And when they are on the mat, I don't think he's going to try so hard to get these submissions. I think he's going to prioritize position because you don't want to get swept. You don't want Gerald Meerschaert to find your back because it's over at that point. Now, I see him spending a lot of time in half guard, inside control, looking for an arm triangle or looking for a Kimura. My issue, however, is that if he gives Gerald Meerschaert space because he's trying to set up an anaconda choke, it's just not going to work. You don't want to set up something like that and find yourself in bottom position because then it's over. So that does worry me. And you have to think, if a guy's trying to take Gerald Meerschaert down so often, like Gerald Meerschaert has a 100% finish rate in the UFC. Seeing Andrea Petroski at this big of a price tag against somebody like Gerald Meerschaert with the type of fight that Andrea Petroski is going to bring to him scares the life out of me. But I am going to go with Petroski, the younger man, the fresher fighter. He's taken a lot less damage, and he's probably the better athlete overall at this point in their careers, respectively. Give me Andrea Petroski to win this fight by submission. Next, Natália Silva fighting Andrea Lee. I would not be surprised if every favorite wins this week because the matchmaking has been ridiculous. Natália Silva fighting Andrea Lee. Lee coming off of a bad decision against Maycee Barber. She did good in that fight. She looked good in that fight. I thought she clearly won when they were reading the judges' scorecard at the end. Before that, she was completely out-grappled by Viviane Araujo. She did have back-to-back wins over Cynthia Calvillo and Antonina Shevchenko, and it looked like she was finally hitting her stride, but the recent setbacks have left her with a 5-5 record in the UFC. Not great. She offers you a lot of takedown upside. She's going to fight hard for 15 minutes, and she fights decently at range, but Natália Silva is different, man. Natália Silva is an absolute savage, and we've picked her every time that she's fought in the UFC. She's been an ATM, 3-0, pure dominance, a mix of power, speed, footwork, grappling ability, and all of that is going to propel her to the top of the division in no time. She's damn good, and she hasn't shown us any weaknesses just yet, and she's a big favorite here, but it's rightfully so. She's younger, she's better everywhere, and she looks like a future title contender at this point, while Andrea Lee is a 500 fighter in the division. Natália Silva wins this fight. She makes it look easy. I see a 30-27 decision in her favor. Give me Natália Silva to win this fight by decision. Now we go from one Silva to the next, and listen, man, you can go back a couple of seconds, listen to the Silva versus Lee breakdown, switch out the name Lee for Moroz, and it's the same thing, brother. Moroz has that dog in her, and she's a better fighter than she is a martial artist. I will give her that, but Karine Silva is a destroyer. 100% finish rate, 8 knockouts, 8 submissions in her 16 fights. Extremely well-rounded, and all of her UFC fights are looking the same. She goes out there, takes these women down, and submits them. Maryna Moroz has no power, and she has less than great takedown defense, and while she's never been finished in her career, I expect that should change this week. Karine Silva is different gravy, and I see her doing what she always does. Give me Karine Killer Silva to win this fight inside the distance. If you've made it to this point, drink your water, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment something for the algorithm, and I will see you later in the week for final picks. Let's go!